Use your powers for evil,
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Next Stop Everywhere, your podcast all about Doctor Who and Game of Thrones crossovers. Hey, Charles, this is how you doing today?
Excellent as always.
Very
How are you
nice.
today?
I am good. I am excited.
By the way, he's Jesse Jackson. I'm Charles Skaggs. In case you're
Yeah,
wondering.
absolutely, yes. There is we don't really have a set. I've listened to a couple podcasts.
Yep.
And they have a set, sitting across from me is
Yep.
Charles Skaggs.
Yep.
Sitting across, it's just, and we just always kind of play it by ear. So, yes. But we're here to talk about the girl who died.
Yep.
We've had the girl who waited. We've had the girl who lived. We've had, all kinds of stuff. But now we're talking about the girl who died.
Lots of girls.
Lots of girls.
And Doctor Who, there's always lots of girls.
There is. This was interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I've been on the record. I don't like two-parters.
Yes.
And so far they're batting 500.
Right.
The first, was really well done.
Okay.
The second one, I thought there wasn't quite enough story for
Mhm.
the second one. And this one, it's
Now,
hard to tell.
Now, was that including the first story, or are you talking are you saying that the first part of this story, or are you talking say the season premiere?
Yeah, so the first two episodes,
Yeah.
the Dalek story, I thought was solid all the way around. I
Okay.
thought it was tons of story and it was worth two parts.
Okay.
Yeah, the Under the Sea, where by the lake.
Under the lake before the
Yes.
flood. Yeah.
Yes, I thought that was a little weak.
Okay.
I was on the record. I didn't know if there was much story to qualify this.
Okay.
So it's hard to tell so far
Mm-hmm.
because this is certainly a good episode
Right.
and an interesting storyline. What we just don't know is, will the payoff be enough to qualify for two episodes? Though I suspect it will be
Mm-hmm.
because this is not truly a cliffhanger
Right.
ending. It's more there's more to tell with this character story.
Yes. I get that totally same impression.
Yes.
That even though this chapter of the story ended in the first
Yes.
part, we haven't gotten all of Ashilder's story yet.
Yes. And I have to say, I'm really, really pleased that your theory and other theories wasn't correct. Though I still would have loved this had been the Master's daughter. I mean, don't get me wrong, that would have been awesome.
Season's not over yet.
Yes, but
I know. Yeah.
I also, it sets up, that famous clip that, what took you so long, old man,
Right.
implied that she knows the Doctor beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
But now then you see she would have known the Doctor.
Right. Because she's immortal and
Yeah.
so they obviously have history.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what took her so long? What took the Doctor so long to arrive at that time, even though she did the slow path,
Right.
and went through year after year?
Yes. But I was just very happy with the episode. It was just the right blend of adventure and
Mhm.
fun, and it had Vikings.
Yep.
Then
Yes.
Vikings are good.
Now, were you one of these nitpicky people that were like, oh, it's the Vikings don't have horns on their helmets, it's historically inaccurate? Or
No,
did you not care?
I didn't care. I was just I was happy that it was set on Earth in
Yep.
the ancient times, because when you saw the fake Odin in the previews
Yep.
with the electronic eye patch, you're like, oh, they're cyborgs, or it's people set in the future that look like Vikings.
Right.
So no, that didn't bother me at all. There is this. If you know a lot of stuff, friend of the podcast, Ken Schaefer.
Mm-hmm.
So take a drink. Served 8 years in the submarine service.
Okay.
So he can't watch any submarine movie because it's just so inaccurate. Like he acknowledges the race, for Red October,
Yep.
or Crimson Tide are all good movies,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps from the acting and story, but the just story point, he can't stand it.
So we probably had a problem with Cold War.
I didn't ask him about that. I need to ask him about
Yeah,
that.
because it's set on a submarine.
Yeah.
That would probably be a
Yeah.
good idea.
And he also has the problem with Halt and Catch Fire,
Okay.
because he was involved a lot in on the retail end in the early
80s.
computers.
Yeah.
So I guess if I was an expert in Vulcans,
Yeah.
Vikings, not Vulcans,
Well,
I might have a problem. But since I don't,
aren't we all experts at Vulcans from watching Star
yes,
Trek?
we are. Absolutely. So I had not heard that. That I could see the nitpickers being unhappy with that.
Yeah. Well, because there's that history drama Vikings,
Yes.
which apparently is pretty good. I haven't watched it, but I hear it's good, so I'm not going to criticize it.
No,
But-
I've heard
but-
it is very good.
But I think a lot of people are into that show, and they've probably made a point of saying, "Well, there's no Vikings with horns."
Hmm.
So that's just a myth or something.
Yes.
It's not historically accurate.
Mhm.
But, this is a show about a guy who travels through time and space. So how accurate is it really going to be?
I think I've shared this story on this podcast, but if I have, I apologize for repeating myself. But the director of the Kevin Costner film "Build It and They Will Come,"
Field of Dreams. Yeah.
Supposedly the director, they got a lot of feedback, and that Joe Jackson was a left-handed hitter or right-hand. I don't remember which one, but
It was the opposite one.
yeah, Ray Liotta
Yeah.
did the other way, and they complained, and he says, I have, dead baseball players showing up in a ball field in Iowa, and that's your problem?
Which just goes to prove my point that even sports fans are nerds.
Yes, they are. They're
just nerds in a different way. They love stats. So, they're just nerds in a different way.
My wife does not agree with this story, and she thinks I'm being unfair, but the first year I went to Dragon Con, I was staying at a Holiday Inn Express that was north of downtown Atlanta. And for those of you who don't know, Dragon Con is a huge convention that happens every Labor Day in Atlanta, and there's always a big college football game that same weekend, and usually it's 2 or 3. It's kind of like a tournament or a festival, so there's always tons of sports fans and all us nerds there. And so I was down at the lobby getting the free Holiday Inn breakfast, and there were cosplayers all dressed up, and there were fans from LSU coming down, and I swear they looked a little like, well, that's odd.
Yeah.
In their LSU jersey, caps,
with a face painted up,
pink logo on their chin. I mean, LSU sweatpants. I mean, and you're going, really? Can you not see yourself in the mirror?
Little hypocrisy there.
Just a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah. So what did you think of Clara this episode? Do you think she's been consistent, or the way this season, because I thought she was. I liked her. I have liked her this whole season, but I especially liked her this episode.
Yeah.
She was almost the conscience.
Yeah. Well, that's generally what the companion's
Right.
role is, to kind of keep the Doctor in check.
Right.
Because they've made a whole big deal, especially in the new era, that
Yes.
if the Doctor travels alone, that's a really bad thing after a while, because he kind of goes off the deep end a little bit, and he needs the companion to rein him in and be a conscience for him. And
So
in this case, Clara, I mean, the 12th Doctor said that she cares, so I don't have to.
right, and I want to get your opinion, and we may go to this later in the episode, but I wanted to share with you that BBC America, is showing 2 episodes, at 9, they're showing every day, they're going cycling through the modern era.
Right.
And along with Tom Baker, which is awesome.
Right.
But the Pompeii episode was on recently.
Mm-hmm. The Fires of Pompeii.
Yeah, it happened to be on my DVR. And so I watched it Saturday night after I watched this one.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to talk about that now or if you want to talk about it later, but
let's get into it later, because it
Okay.
because there's a lot to cover before we get there.
Okay. But I wanted to throw that out there because, he specifically, the 10th Doctor tells Donna,
Mm-hmm.
"You're right. I shouldn't be alone." That's not the exact quote, but something like that. So that was very good. So we've got Vikings.
Yes.
And we have they end up capturing the Doctor and Clara, and he decides, right, he's going to play the whole God thing.
Yeah. Well, he's pretending to be Odin.
Yes, and that didn't work out well for him.
The Norse god, father of Thor.
Yes.
But interestingly, the Doctor didn't look a thing like Anthony Hopkins.
I was going to make that same joke. Thank you, sir.
I made it last night on Twitter. It's there.
Yeah.
So
he did not ask for the sacred text, but he kind of sort of did, because to quote Farscape, there's always a sacred text. And them breaking the sonic sunglasses was pretty darn funny.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there were a lot of people happy about that, until they watched the Next Time trailer and saw that the sonic shades were back in next week's episode. So
yes.
Sorry about your luck, but yeah.
Exactly. I did wonder, when I saw them break it and they throw one of them down, I wondered if there was that a commentary of fandom? Was he doing that, or did this just happen to be the storyline?
I think it was just more to not give the Doctor that easy out with the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to come up with something else.
Yes.
Made it a little more challenging for him.
Absolutely.
So I think it happened to coincide with the growing resentment in fandom over the sonic shades.
Yeah.
So
talk to me your impressions of Clara in the spaceship. With
you were asking me about Clara before.
Yeah, so, go ahead. Let me go. Yes.
Clara, she gets her little moment as she gets brought up to the Meyer spaceship, and she's kind of taking charge. She's very defiant, very Doctor-like. So you kind of see the progression where she's turning into him. And interestingly, there's a moment in this episode where the Doctor tells her to get a hobby, and she says, "Well, you're my hobby."
Yes.
So that seems to be a little unhealthy, in my opinion, that she's making the Doctor her focus.
I could see that, though. We have seen this. Because remember, she did the whole fake out last time.
Yeah.
Where she said, "There is no Clara Oswald."
Yeah.
I'm the Doctor. And
in Death in Heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and so she's done this before, and I just thought that was
Mhm.
really cool. I love when she shows how capable she is and how she's kind of thinking. It's her version
Mhm.
of, and I want to call it Sherlock Holmes, or Dr. Houses, to whatever you want to do.
Yep.
But she's the doctor. By, using her intellect, she can read through these different things.
Right.
And I like that a lot.
So let me ask you something.
Okay.
Have you noticed a trend with Clara where we've kind of had several almost eh, deaths of Clara? Like at the beginning of this episode, she's in space floating, and the TARDIS gets attacked by a battle fleet, and Clara has to be rescued from certain doom right off the bat, but she escapes. And there's been kind of a little trend with that where she's had these little narrow escapes, like with Missy, and the Missy tricks the doctor, tries to trick the doctor into exterminating Clara inside the Dalek, and so on.
Okay.
So do you
What's your
think,
question?
well, my question is, do you think we're getting set up for the eventually finally having her killed off
The,
for
the,
realsies?
they certainly seem to want us to think that, don't you? I
Yes.
believe. Um, the and he keeps talking about losing her.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Like
you know, I,
he hugs her. I mean, when she gets brought back from the Meyer spaceship,
mhm,
Mr. Hugs her just a way to hide your face, is rushing
yeah,
toward her, hugging her
yeah.
blatantly,
At
just
first he doesn't.
overjoyed to see her.
Yeah, at first he doesn't,
Yeah.
and then he's great. Um,
So that's an interesting development.
I do, and it's always dangerous traveling with the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem to me they're at least trying to set the expectation that, and they may twist at the last minute, that we're going to lose a companion.
Right.
And have we lost a modern full-time companion? Now I know we lost the what was her name on the Titanic episode?
Well, Astrid,
Yeah, Astrid,
but
but
she
she
wasn't
wasn't
really a companion.
right. Um have we lost a modern companion?
Um,
And somebody's going to
no,
be
no,
yelling at
not really. No, we
I
haven't.
don't think so either.
No, we haven't. I mean, we've had several like almost companions die. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned Astrid, and
Yes.
then we had to the discussion about Osgood and
Right.
O'Donnell last week.
Which, by the way, shout
Yes.
out to Chip, 2 Minute Time Lord. He expressed my concern as well. Now, as he said, it's too soon to be
Mm-hmm.
a theory, but I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one feeling that way, though I do acknowledge you had the logic and everything going on. Just throwing it out there.
Just saying. Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so the last one, really the last official companion that died was Adric back in Earthshock in 1982. So it's been quite some time since we've had one of the Doctor's companions die.
Yeah.
And
While they certainly established that it is
so we're kind of long overdue, in my opinion.
yes. And do y- do you think they want to do that in this modern era?
They should. I don't know if they will, but they should, because this is really dangerous what companions do. And but what I don't like in this case with Clara is like, okay, you think, oh well, she could die here, she could die here, she doesn't die.
Yeah.
And so that if she does finally die, it might feel a little cheap, and
Okay.
it won't have as much impact.
Okay.
Unless it's something like Joss Whedon, where somebody turns around and boom, they're dead.
Right.
Which
Okay.
is really good at that. Like he'll have you
Yeah.
really upbeat 1 minute, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody dies,
Yes.
and it's heartbreaking.
Right.
So that would be the only way you could really kill off Clara, in my opinion, and still have some form of emotional impact at this point.
Okay. And I do think if we lose her, I think even if it isn't sudden, I'm gonna be sad.
Right.
I've liked her, and I'm okay with that. I do think it will be it. They are sure making us feel that way, aren't they?
And yes, they are. I think the original ending with Death in Heaven, where Clara is old,
Mm-hmm.
or that, and the doctor goes to her, bedside and everything. I think
Yeah.
she would have died there originally as an old woman. But then
Yes.
but then the actress Jenna Coleman changed her mind, decided she wanted to come back
Right.
for the Christmas special.
Yes.
So I think that was rewritten. But I get this really. I mean, I have no basis for this, but I
Right.
get a feeling. This is just writer's intuition, if you will, that
Mm.
I think Clara was originally going to die as an old woman in her bed with the doctor there,
Okay.
and that would have been a heartbreaking ending.
Yeah, it would have been.
It would
It
have
would
been
have
it would
been.
have been a really good ending.
Yes, it would have been.
So I don't know if we will get one as good, but we'll find out.
Hmm. Yeah. Are you ready to predict, or is it too soon?
I think it's too soon.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we just kind of got a very interesting piece of the puzzle with a Shilder
Yes.
introduced, and I think a Shilder will be next episode. The girl who lived. I don't think that's going to be the last we see of her. I have a feeling.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that she may turn up in the series or the series 9 finale at some point,
Hmm. Okay.
but we'll see.
Okay. Very nice. Let's see. We talked about the spaceship.
Hmm.
Um, the I want to talk a little bit about the doctor and him having the light bulb go over his head. But
Yeah,
before that, I want to talk about, you know, his runaway plan and just, okay, you guys are too, you aren't going to help yourself, so I'm just moving on.
yeah.
Yeah, what was your thinking there?
Oh, you mean where he almost kind of gives up, and then
Yes.
he talks to a Shilder, and she kind of guilt, and then he hears the baby crying, or
Yes.
like he's translating for the baby, and then he
Hmm.
realizes that, okay, I'm going to stay, and we're going to sort
Right.
this out.
Yes.
I mean, I really kind of like that scene.
Yes.
That for one thing, it brings back the fact that, well, the doctor can still speak baby.
I
So,
love the doctor
so,
can speak
so
baby.
shout out to Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All, from from
Yes.
from Closing Time.
Right.
One of my favorites. I
Hmm.
just love the episode because I thought Matt Smith was just brilliant in that
Yes.
episode with oh, what's his name, James Corden.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
new Late Show host James Corden, which is really interesting for us
Uh,
Yanks. But
Yes. Absolutely.
um, but it is nice to see that continue,
Hmm.
and it actually serves the plot in this one because it forces the doctor to change his mind,
Yes, it does.
and that I think someone made mention a while back. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was saying something about the doctor, that the doctor, can't refuse like a crying child or something like that, to that effect. I can't remember the exact line, but something along those lines. So it kind of
Hmm.
fits in with the doctor's persona, that even though if he may be gruff inside, but this is still going to affect him and affect his decision.
And I thought it was really well done.
Hmm.
The translation of, the,
The baby.
yeah, the baby. Are you there?
Yep.
should I be afraid?
Yep.
I thought that was very, very well done.
And then we got Fire in the Water, which pays off
Yes.
later with the electric eels.
Yes.
So
Which was very, we talked about this before, but very wheelbarrow Princess Bride moment.
yes.
No one told me how to electric eels.
Yep.
um,
But he's all excited, and it's great to see him. When he gets
Yes.
that everything clicks and goes bing, like you said, over his head, and
Yeah.
and you hear the theme. You got the 12th Doctor's theme music kicking in, and it's like, ooh, yeah, we're going now. So love that.
And it is one of my favorite things of the Doctor and his companion is when the companion has faith in the Doctor,
hmm
you'll come up with this answer.
Right.
You will figure this out. You will come up with a real plan. You will come up with a plan. He goes, this is my plan. I'm going to teach him to fight. And, no. That's not your real plan. You don't know your real plan yet. And I thought that was very, very cool
Right.
and true.
Well, with Clara, she's been around the Doctor for so long by now. She probably recognizes the look when he's really figured it out in his head
Yes.
and has his game plan.
I
And
absolutely think she does.
And she said it earlier to Ashildr, where she's telling, they're kind of sitting together off to the side and saying, like, he doesn't have his plan yet, but once he does, it's going to be brilliant.
Yes. I totally agree. Do you so did you enjoy the scenes with them learning how to use the swords and all him trying to build a team together?
Yeah, that was funny, where he gives them all like dopey names, and
Yes.
that was kind of cute. Good comic relief.
It was very, very funny. I love that about that. How about
I have to admit, I laughed when he called one of them ZZ Top. I thought that was
yes,
hilarious.
because of the beard.
Yes,
Yes, that was
hilarious.
very, very great. The Odin in the Clouds was very Monty Python-ish.
Yes, it was right out of Monty Python: The Holy Grail,
Yes.
the animated sequence where God appears. It's animated by Terry Gilliam, who's always brilliant in doing this little like stop motion animation.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just this figure in the clouds, and I'm sure that was kind of deliberate.
Yes. And how about the reverse the polarity of the neutron flow? Or
that's always
means?
Yep, that's always a staple ever since John Pertwee's Third Doctor.
Right.
That line gets worked in every so often, and I never get tired of hearing the Doctor, no matter which Doctor it is, say that.
So, Charles, is there a story about the yo-yo?
Well, the yo-yo, now that you bring it up, I was anticipating your question about the yo-yo.
Hey, sometimes it's easy for me just to throw you a softball and like, okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom now because Charles is going to be on a roll.
Yeah, you just kind of teed this up.
Yes, I did.
So yeah, this episode we get the return of the Doctor's yo-yo. This was kind of first introduced during Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor era.
Okay.
And his second story, The Ark in Space, where he's using it to test the local gravity in that episode.
Okay.
And that may sound a little familiar, because later during the 12th Doctor era in Kill the Moon, the 12th Doctor pulls out his yo-yo to say, to inspect the gravity there. So
right.
That was a nod to that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the 7th Doctor had a yo-yo as well. Only he wasn't shown using it, but it was in his little bag of personal effects that Chang Lee went through in the TV movie. That one of the objects he pulls out is the Doctor's yo-yo. So
okay,
the Doctor, it's made its appearance over the years, and it was in about, I want to say, at least 4 or 5 Tom Baker stories.
Mm-hmm.
So Baker's the one it's most associated with, but it seems Capaldi really liked it, and he's worked it in twice now. So, or at least the writers have.
And yes, and the impression is from Clara that it happens more than just what we have seen. That this may have been other adventures they've had this on and talked about it, which is
Right.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Capaldi seems to be like wanting to incorporate a lot from the first four Doctors: Hartnell,
Yeah.
Troughton, Pertwee, and Baker. Whether it's what
Yes.
he's wearing, like in this episode, the girl who died, he's kind of wearing almost second Doctor Patrick Troughton trousers.
Okay.
And
Yes.
before, like in the season opener, he was wearing very Hartnell trousers. So he's kind of like incorporating those elements here and there. Some are
Yes.
subtle, some are really overt, like the yo-yo.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's kind of interesting. It shows just how much of a fanboy he is for the classic era.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what did you think of the? First off, you
Yeah.
had to laugh at the yakety sax, the video.
Right.
But
Boots
I think
Randolph,
yes,
aka the Benny Hill theme.
yes. I thought that was a pretty clever way
Yep.
because the Doctor had expressed the problem.
Hmm.
Even if we defeat them, they're going to want to come back.
Right.
But by coming up this plan, he kind of made it's a détente,
Yep.
right? I'll release this. So I love that.
So I kind of wonder though why he hasn't used that threat before.
Hmm.
This whole galactic hub, which is
Yes.
essentially the Doctor Who version of the internet. It's space internet,
Yes.
the galactic hub. So why hasn't he, like, for example, like taken, like when he was on Skaro with Davros
Mhm.
earlier this season, why he didn't just like, record that footage, upload, say, hey, look what a tool Davros is. And
Yeah.
nobody takes him seriously and completely discredits him.
Yeah.
Or the Master. You'd think he would do it for the Master,
You would think so.
or the Master would do it on him. Maybe the Master has like a Galactic Hub account,
Yeah.
and uploads videos of the Doctor. Who knows? But
Yeah. I don't know. So I love the battle. I loved the idea, it's key that I get this helmet.
yep.
And then, I guess they kind of made a neural net, hand wave that we could build this thing
Hmm.
using electrical eels and all the metal and stuff from the blacksmith can find.
I'm not sure the electric eels would give off that much electricity, but
Yes.
yeah.
But they gave enough so that, it looked like, this huge dragons coming on there and everything.
Yep.
So it was very good.
Yeah.
Before we get to the kind of significant of the Doctor's faces and everything,
Yeah.
were you happy with Macy Williams? As he asked an obvious question.
Yeah. Well, I thought she did a perfectly fine job. She's been essentially doing like a version of Arya Stark here, where she's a Viking girl and she's very defiant as far as like wanting to protect her people. And there's at least some similarities. I mean, it's a different character, but you kind of got that vibe. And she stands up to the Doctor, telling him how much she cares about her people and that he needs to do something to protect them.
Yeah.
And so casting her was obviously a very smart idea. For one thing, it's good stunt casting, but it also worked for the story, which I liked.
Yeah, and she is a very good young actress.
Hmm.
And I thought she was likable. I thought she had a charm to her. And I believe she specifically played this character a little simple
Hmm.
and a little naive so that next week there'll be a different depth to her.
Oh yeah, because it's going to be, how many years later?
Right.
Like hundreds of years later.
Mm-hmm.
And as we kind of got a little hint of, a glimpse of at the end of this episode, where they kind of show the world turning around her, and
Yeah.
she stays the same, but then her face, it initially starts off very, like bright and and cheerful, but then gets very solemn and serious at the end of the turning.
Yes.
And so I think that's obviously as the years and whatever, where she looks the same. People have died around here because she's immortal,
Yes.
and so yeah, that's one of the things that getting Maisie Williams wasn't again a great idea because she can play obviously dark characters
Yes.
as we've seen with Arya. Arya is a
Yes.
very dark character at times,
Yes.
so I think this character is going to get dark in a way.
Hmm.
And there's probably going to be some resentment toward the Doctor for making her immortal. And
Right.
this is like, it. I don't think it's going to be like. I don't think Maisie, well, a Shielder's um, outlook on immortality is going to be the same as Captain Jack's outlook on
Right.
immortality. His is more like, yes, it's this thing I live with, but I'm still a very, outgoing, generally happy-go-lucky character, although I do kind of brood about it at times.
Yes.
But I think, yeah, we'll see where a Schilder's character goes from here. And like I said, I think it's gonna may get even darker, and she may end up becoming an enemy of the Doctor as a result of this
Oh.
forced immortality. It's just a
Oh.
theory.
Okay.
And if nothing else, for the reason that she's basically referred to as the Doctor refers to her as a hybrid. And if you were
Yes.
paying attention at the end of The Witch is Familiar,
Hmm.
where Davros kind of makes this prophecy where about like there's two great warrior races and that this hybrid would be made of, Time Lord and Dalek. But what if it was something else? What
Mm.
if Davros was right about the hybrid, but wrong about the components of that hybrid?
Okay.
And so, what if Missy or somebody gets a hold of this hybrid and uses her for some purpose, or the hybrid herself becomes a
Mm.
serious threat? So I'm kind of wondering. Like I said, I get a feeling we may not see the last of her next week.
Okay. Okay. I think
So
that would be awesome.
it'd be, we'll see if I'm right. I could be completely wrong about this, so
Okay.
I'll put that right out front. But yeah,
No,
we'll
that's a
see.
good guess.
It's a great fan theory, if nothing else.
Absolutely. Okay, Charles,
Yes.
talk to me about the. They have Moffat has been on record saying that he was going to not ignore the fact that Peter Capaldi has not had one but
Right.
two roles in the Who verse.
Yes.
He was absolutely. He was good in the Fires of Pompeii, but he was brilliant in the Torchwood.
Yeah.
And I felt so horrible for him.
Yeah.
And that was a dark turn how that character ended up doing.
Yeah. He played John Frobisher
Yes.
in Torchwood Children of Earth,
Yes.
which is really fantastic. It's probably Torchwood's best season, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I've loved a lot of them. I did not enjoy the final as of now series as much.
Right.
But that one, it would have been tough to beat that anyway.
Yeah, it's just a really great story all around throughout the 5 episodes.
And I so wish we were podcasting back then, because that would be that would have been fun.
Yeah, it would have
to talk about that. So I'm going to tee you up. Tell me what you think the Doctor is saying. They showed a lot of clips of him talking about the face and reminding, and why did I pick this face?
Right.
So if you can, Charles.
Yes.
Oh, master of who-ness. Tell us what we know, and then tell us what you're speculating on. If it's okay if you mix the two, but kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, the basic rundown of this, the Doctor, he's kind of sick of losing people he cares about, and he wishes he could save everyone. And then he sees his reflection in like this, I don't know if it's a barrel or something, a barrel of water,
which is another
which is kind of
red,
Lion King moment.
and it's a red herring or not necessarily red herring, but a flag. Hello, he's tired of losing something. He may lose Clara at the end of this.
Yes, again.
Okay.
So he now all of a sudden he realizes, and I think this is the scene that this is why Stephen Moffat's contribution is in this episode, as opposed to just Jamie Matheson.
Okay.
Because it says Jamie Matheson and Stephen Moffat. I think this whole sequence was Moffat's.
Okay.
So he realizes why he chose this face for his 12th incarnation.
Okay.
And it's something that, he talks about how, like originally when we saw Deep Breath, Capaldi's first episode, he was wondering about this. He's like, well, why did I choose this face? There had to be a reason. Why this particular face? Now he understands the reason. And it's of Caecilius from the Fires of Pompeii, which Peter Capaldi previously played in. We get a nice little flashback scene where we see the 10th Doctor and Donna. So it's a nice little fan service moment where we're like, hey, it's the 10th Doctor and Donna. And we see Caecilius from the Fires of Pompeii as, he's connecting the dots. And it serves as a reminder, we find out, that he broke the rules of time to save this man and his family, so that subconsciously he wanted himself to remember that feeling, so that presumably he would break the rules again.
And so I wanted to read
and save people.
Yeah.
So what is he like trying to tell himself to break the rules to save Clara?
Yeah. So Fraser McAlpine, who posts on BBC America /Anglophenia, had this theory, and I'm going to read this, and I thought it was very interesting. To find the true significance of the Doctor's choice of face and why the 11th Doctor would choose to regenerate using the face of Caecilius.
Yep.
The man the 10th Doctor saved when Pompeii erupted, you need to go back and watch the Fires of Pompeii, which I did.
Yep.
It's clear he was worried about starting a regeneration cycle from scratch might erase his prime directive to be the man who saves people. This plus the phone call to Clara in Deep Breath suggests that the 11th Doctor wasn't at all sure who he would become if he had to start again.
Right.
So do you agree with that theory?
Well, it's an interesting theory because then we have another bootstrap paradox.
Yes.
Because you've got the 11th Doctor hearing a phone call of Clara from the future.
Yes.
Where she's seen the 12th Doctor, knows what he looks like. He asks her if he's old.
Yes.
And so that kind of gets into his head and kind of helps form his incarnation, his next incarnation. So it kind of
good point.
He creates himself in the bootstrap paradox.
And if you haven't gone back and seen the episode, listeners, I really recommend it, because Donna's point was, can't you just save one family?
Right.
I understand you can't stop everything, but can you save one?
Mm-hmm.
And the Doctor agrees he does. And it has the great payoff at the end where, the mom's like, thank the household gods before you leave. And the household gods is the TARDIS.
Yeah.
The Doctor and Donna, So,
well, to be fair, they stepped up where the regular household gods didn't.
Yeah, that is true.
But interestingly, well, you bring that point up, and at the beginning of this episode, The Girl Who Died, the Doctor talks to Clara about, like Claire's asking him, well, you never tell me the rules of time travel, which I thought was kind of weird at this point because she's been around traveling with him forever. Shouldn't she know the rules by now? But then he tells her that, they're time travelers, but they have to be careful what they do. They can create ripples, but not tidal waves.
Thank you for taking my quote.
No, sorry.
No, I'm just joking. That was my quote, but yes, I do think.
Well, I didn't quote exactly, so there you go.
No. I do think it's convenient, and this is.
So is the Doctor going to make ripples?
Is there the I don't know if I'd call it great, but the classic movie North Dallas 40.
Okay.
Nick Nolte is talking to the general manager of the football team, and he says, every time I call it a game, you call it a business. Every time I call it a business, you call it a game. And I think if I'm Clara or thing, it's when is it a fixed point of time?
Yeah.
How can you tell?
Yeah.
And you seem to be
the one who knows the rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're Kirk, you never break the prime directive unless you need to break the prime directive.
Unless you're Kirk.
Yes.
The prime directive is more of a guidelines than a hard fast rule.
I do appreciate the fact that Next Generation tried to be that more solid, that this truly was a rule. And the reality is, right, that the Doctor has a feel and he kind of has to go through. And, Waters of Mars has one of the best endings, I think, most powerful endings of, the 10th Doctor not worrying about that anymore and saying, I don't have to follow the rules. I am the last Time Lord.
Yeah, but when we saw what happens to that.
Exactly.
Because he becomes the Time Lord victorious.
Yes.
There's kind of that moment in this episode.
Right.
Where the 12th Doctor, he gets very angry and defiant, like, I'm going to save these people no matter what.
Yes.
After hearing that baby.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets a little, full of himself a little bit. He gets a little Time Lord victorious, I thought.
I agree with that, and I do think that
where he saves Shilder.
Yes,
that's what I meant. That he, he doesn't want to lose her,
right? And so he gets that, the MacGuffin, the self-repairing kit.
Yes, and makes her immortal, whether it's right or not.
Yes,
he's going to do it. And so, it's a little Time Lord victorious.
And it was a little strange to me because, they say, and I can understand the difference, but he doesn't like being around Captain Jack because Jack is, it's uncomfortable, right? He's
the way they've explained is, he's an aberration,
right,
to the law, to the natural,
right,
time. So wouldn't he get that kind of same feeling about a Shilder now?
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe because she just is immortal, it isn't that same strangeness. And I do think it's always funny that he can't remote control the TARDIS, except when he needs to remote control the TARDIS. So they've got to get in the long ship and they've got to row and everything.
It's 2 days away.
Yes.
So presumably to go back to the TARDIS, they have to go 2 days by boat to get there again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, provided somebody hasn't walked off with it.
Right. Sold it once again. Going back to Pompeii.
Yeah.
And you wonder, okay, how often can you move the TARDIS? It seems like it's fairly easy to move the TARDIS.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too heavy because it seems like you could just load it up on a cart, which has been done in a number of, especially classic episodes.
Yes.
And you could just cart it off somewhere.
Absolutely. Okay, so what else do we need to talk about in the episode, Charles?
Let's see. All right.
As Charles checks his notes.
Yeah, right off the bat. This episode was directed by Edward Bazalgette, I guess. Okay. And I only bring this up because it turns out that Edward Bazalgette was the lead guitarist in the Vapors, which was an 80s one-hit wonder band that did the song Turning Japanese. You may have heard it. Like, I'm turning Japanese. I think I'm turning Japanese. I really think so. So I thought it was really interesting. It was like, okay, this guy is now like directing Doctor Who.
Okay.
All
Did not
these,
know that.
all these years later.
Okay.
But he also directed the Doctor's Meditation. So
okay.
so this wasn't his first go round, but
Okay.
so I just
And
just one of those little trivia bits. I don't know if people caught it, but
And he's doing next week's episode as well.
yeah, because it's two-parter.
Right.
They seem to have the same director for both two-parters,
Right.
which
Okay.
makes perfect sense because you kind of keep that continuity a little bit.
Okay.
Let's see. We talked about the Monty Python the Holy Grail bit. Let's see. We talked about yakety sax. Okay. The Doctor's 2,000-year diary.
Yes, I did have a note about that. Talk to me a little about that.
Okay. This was a nice nod to old school fans like myself, with the 2,000-year diary making its appearance. Originally, the first time it appeared, it was only just a wee 500-year diary. It's
Okay.
introduced in Patrick Troughton's first story, Power of the Daleks, back in 1966.
Okay.
So later it turns up again in the TV movie. Like, so we get a lot of nods to the TV movie in this episode.
Which is nice.
Where the Seventh Doctor had a 900-year diary. But now here it is. Now it's a 2,000-year diary because the Doctor's over 2,000 years old, I guess. So it looks pretty much the same size, but it's probably bigger on the inside, right? Because it's
absolutely
Doctor's diary. But yeah, so it's a very like cheeky nod, you know, like if you're, it's nothing distracting, but if you're like an old school fan like myself, you're like, yee, it's the diary, that Doctor's diary. So anyway, that's all about that.
Okay.
And at the end of the episode, you know, talking about something else. At the end of the episode, the Doctor reflects on what the consequences might be of his potentially dangerous decision to save Ashildr and make her immortal. And he makes the comment, well, time will tell. It always does. And that is a phrase the Seventh Doctor used at the end of Remembrance of the Daleks, which we covered here, Next Stop Everywhere.
Right.
Where it was referring to his decision to destroy Davros and Skaro and whether that was a good decision.
Yes.
So there's a nice little nod to the past there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And last thing I have is that the guy who played Odin this episode, David Schofield, well, it turns out Odin was originally supposed to be played by Brian Blessed, who previously played King Yrcanos. Now, if you don't know Brian Blessed, if you watch the 1980 film Flash Gordon, and you know,
Flash!
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
and if you know, like, you know, King Vultan, King of the Hawkmen,
Yes.
that's Brian Blessed.
Okay.
And so, or if you saw Blackadder, the first one, you know who Brian Blessed is because he's just that he's got a very booming voice and he's very, you know, shouty and he's. But Brian Blessed also previously played King Yrcanos in the Sixth Doctor story Mind Warp, and he was and a little trivia bit. He was originally offered the role of the Second Doctor in 1966.
Wow.
But didn't take it. And I think we're much better off because I think Patrick Troughton was much better than I think Brian Blessed would have been in that role.
Nothing against Brian Blessed fans if they thought, you know, he would be. Okay.
But
they're wrong. But
apparently Blessed had to pull out of this episode. I'm presuming maybe health reasons because he's older now.
Okay.
And so he got replaced by David Schofield. But I just thought that was a neat little trivia bit as well.
It is. Okay, good.
So
all right.
That's all I got.
Okay. What's your rating?
My rating for this episode, I give this one 8.5 out of 10 shattered sonic shades.
And I also will go 8.5. You know.
So we're in sync.
Yeah, we are in sync. I thought this was really good. Yeah, I'd give it a 8.5. You know,
creepy puppets from
creepy puppets. Yes, absolutely.
I felt kind of bad for Ashildr. It's like, well, I sit around and make puppets all day.
Yeah. And she's a pessimist, right? So she's like,
Yeah.
they said if this all happened, even if it wasn't your fault, you would blame yourself.
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting.
And I thought it was interesting. She refers to herself as strange. So
Yes.
of course the Doctor identifies with that and
Absolutely
immediately bonds with this girl.
Mm-hmm. So we've already talked about one of my quotes. We are time travelers. We tread softly. It's okay to make ripples, but not tidal waves.
Mm-hmm.
But my other one was from Clara.
Go ahead so I don't steal it.
Okay, it's official. Silence is even worse than a Scottish accent. Are you going to tell me what you're brooding about?
Nice.
Yes.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Yes, I did too.
Any others?
No. There's one other, but I'm going to let you talk.
Okay. I had 3 in this one. Okay. First one I have is, I'm not actually the police. That's just what it says on the box.
I love that line.
That was a great line.
That was a great line.
And then I've got another one. The Doctor says, what's the one thing gods never do? They never show up.
Yes. Yes. So we may think the Doctor is an atheist.
No, he's just been around the block.
Okay, very good. Okay.
So yeah, he just I think he probably meant it in the context that there are a lot of people who pretend to be gods that aren't.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then last one I have here is this exchange between Ashildr and the Doctor.
Yes.
Where Ashildr asks him, you think they're all idiots, don't you? And he goes, and the Doctor replies, what? You mean the rest of the universe? Basically, yes, I do.
Yes. The only other one I had is, and I thought this was very poignant and says so much about the Doctor. Immortality isn't living forever. That's not what it feels like. Immortality is everyone else dying. Mm-hmm. And which says a lot about the Doctor.
Right. Well, I mean, he's lived for 2,000 years. He's seen plenty of people die.
Yes.
I mean, he's lost his family, his world, and various companions over the years, whether they leave on their own volition or they don't leave on their own volition or they die.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
I'm sure you have a reverse the polarity. So do you want to share it?
I do. It's kind of a mild one, but you might appreciate it. I'm going to go back. We're going to reverse the polarity back to 1965, all the way back during the William Hartnell era, to the Time Meddler, which is the Hartnell's 17th story. It's the 9th serial from season 2, kind of like the series 2 season 2 finale, written by Dennis Spooner, where you have the first Doctor, Stephen and his companions Stephen and Vicky, arriving in 1066 on the northeastern coast of England.
Okay.
And there they encounter the monk, who is the very first Time Lord, other than the Doctor and Susan, that we meet on Doctor Who.
Ooh, nice.
So this is kind of a big deal. This is pre-Master. So
okay.
And the monk is like the title of the story is, he's a time meddler. He wants to meddle with history, and this time his plan is to lure a Viking scouting party. So this is where I make the connection, Vikings, to the coast of England, and then destroy the fleet with atomic bazookas, because apparently the monk is packing in this one.
Okay. And
the whole reason for doing this is he wants to change history, so this shores up and this is his plan. He wants to shore up the Anglo-Saxon King Harold to such an extent that he doesn't end up losing the Battle of Hastings later on.
Ah, okay.
So if you history buffs are into the Battle of Hastings, and I'm sure there's millions of people who are into the Battle of Hastings, but again, it's kind of a pseudo-historical story. But yeah, we do get Vikings, and it's pretty much the only time we really see Vikings on Doctor Who.
Okay.
It was in this story way back so it's been a long time since we've seen Vikings on Doctor Who.
It has been.
So they're kind of overdue. But we get some, and they're back. So if you enjoyed want to see some Vikings on Doctor Who, there you go. The Time Meddler, first Doctor story. So check that out.
Nice.
That's it.
Okay. Did we get any feedback this time?
I don't think so. I didn't see anything.
I didn't think so
Unless
either.
you got some email.
No, I did not get any emails, and I'm looking to see real quick. I don't think we've got.
We need some more returning special guest companions, apparently.
We did get from Zeus.t.s.
Oh,
Love it.
Zeusy, you nut, you.
Yes. If you love this series, you'll love this podcast. Highly entertain it. Love it. So
Now,
thank you.
is that on
That's an
iTunes? That's
iTunes review.
all
Yes.
right. So there you
Yeah.
go. If you want to get your review read here on Next Stop Everywhere, then why you should go to iTunes and review us
Yes.
and let us know what you think. Hopefully you like us. If not, that's cool, but hopefully you like
Yeah.
us.
You can also go to Stitcher and leave reviews
Oh,
for
there you
those
go.
of you who hate iTunes with a passion.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yes.
I have iTunes and I hate it with a passion sometimes too. But
Yeah. So Charles, we got to wait a week to talk about it.
yeah,
But I'm really looking forward to the second half.
yeah, I really want to see Maisie Williams as a one of these little what do you call it? The oh shoot, I had a name for this. the
Okay.
like the adamant type robbers. I can't remember the name.
Okay.
There's a term for it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, I just am instead of and I agree, seeing the doctor, as a ghost, in the previous
oh,
episode.
Highwaymen. That's what.
Yeah.
A highwayman.
Okay, Highwayman.
Yeah.
But
that-
I really am just wondering the payoff on this character and how she's grown and adapted over the
Right.
centuries. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I think this is going to be really fun, and I hope you're right that she actually make appearance later in this series.
Yeah, we'll find out either like some I can't think or I have to think that the doctor's just not going to leave this immortal character going through life and then we never hear from her again after next week.
Do you?
Somehow it has to be resolved. Either next week it gets resolved or
Mhm.
again in the series 9 finale.
Do you remember right offhand the Sandman issue or the title where
Yes.
Morbius goes every what is it?
Yeah.
Every 100 years.
Every 100 years he meets a guy in a pub.
Right.
Because the guy he makes this like arrangement with his sister Death that Death won't come to claim him.
Right.
So he's essentially becomes immortal, and it'll every 100 years, Morpheus, the Sandman, or Dream, take your pick, meets with him to see if he's ready for death yet.
Right.
And so we kind of see him go through the centuries and
Yes.
how things change, how things stay the same.
Yes.
And
the bars change. It's always a bar,
right.
but how it's different changed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a very cool story by Neil
It is a cool story.
Gaiman. So check it out.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't remember the issue number offhand. I should
Yes.
know this. I used to know this, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely.
This is
Charles.
the entire run of Sandman. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
Check out the entire run. That way, eventually, you'll get around to it and you'll see it.
Yes, it is. So Charles, how can they find you?
They can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter or at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Also on Facebook. So check me out there. Or on Google Plus for you crazy kids on the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen. And my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about things like Doctor Who and Next Stop Everywhere and all kinds of stuff that you might like. Comics and sci-fi, all kinds of goodness.
And you and Karen are still doing the Fandom Zone?
Yeah, the Phantom Zone podcast, where we review just about every comic book show on television that's on right now. We have 6 shows we review right now. We're going to be adding a 7th when Supergirl starts airing.
Very excited about Supergirl.
So I hope you check that. And I know you have about 1 billion podcasts yourself.
Yes, Karen and I do the Castle podcast, and this last week I liked the show a little bit better. I'm still not happy with the total storyline, but it's good. And my latest obsession is set listing Bruce. In fact, I am recording an episode after this one. And this week, depending on when we release this, probably the same day that we release this one, I have my first, I have a guest from South Africa
Ooh.
talking to me about Bruce. And it's a very different episode because he's my age. And so he grew up listening to music during apartheid.
Okay.
And that
Yeah.
there was a lot of censorship.
Right.
And how he did. So that was a very interesting episode. And then on Thursday probably will be friend of the podcast, Wendy Hembrook, talking about Pearl Jam.
Nice.
So yes. And so yeah.
So just out of the blue, I'm dying to know this. How
Sure.
did you come up with the title Set Lusting Bruce? Because that seems a little like suspect. You're like, okay, what is set lusting? Or are we lusting Bruce? Or what? What's going on there?
I am so glad you asked that question,
it's very
Charles.
weird.
Okay. So the many bands do this, but Bruce especially does a different set list every night when he performs.
Okay.
He does not do the same songs, and he does not do them in the same order.
Okay.
And with social media, people have started tweeting the set list.
Okay.
So when the first song comes out, they tweet it. Then they tweet the second, third, on and on and on.
Okay.
And so fans will be on Twitter if they're not at the show watching to see. And then every once in a while, you'll get a I'm trying to think of, it would be not Sting doing Every Breath You Take, but something really obscure
Yes.
from one of his albums. You would go, oh, I can't believe he's doing that song and I'm not
Right.
there.
Right.
So as people were watching that Twitter feed, they started saying we're set lusting. In other words, we have a lust, for the set. What are we doing? We have this passion.
Okay.
Wishing we could be there. And so it worked out that set lusting Bruce really captures the feeling of that. I was going to do Bruce Buds, but a good friend, in fact, Tony, who I'm hoping to have on the show, actually has a Bruce Buds website where he sells, different bumper stickers and T-shirts and everything. Though Karen did name, and shout out to Karen, I'm going to have you on sometime soon to talk about the Sting,
The police.
The police.
Yeah. Right.
But I was wondering, how do I call that? And I was like, what do I, on the flip side? And Karen said, well, why don't you call it the B side?
Yeah.
So I'm going to start calling it Set Lusting Bruce, a B side.
Yeah, the
when
B-sides,
I do a different artist. And I said, that's perfect, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the answer. And we don't have to keep this in, but that's
no. I'm sure there's people wondering that as well. But,
yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, now we know, and knowing is half the battle.
Absolutely. Charles, thank you so much. As always, this is a blast, and we need to talk beforehand. Like if it's, and I hate to ask for a dud episode, but I do want to do our companions discussion.
Okay.
So we may just have to plan in advance, like, okay, we're going to do a little bit extended recording and we'll kind of talk about that. So we'll do that in the next couple of weeks. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Good. And
just drop me a line.
I will. Listeners, thank you for listening to us. We always appreciate your support. And so for now, I'm going to say keep hope alive and say I am and always will be the optimist, the hoper of far-flung hopes and the dreamer of impossible dreams.
Nice.
That is Charles and I both. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.